dive deep into one of Africa's darkest chapters. This video unravels the shocking rise, reign, and ruin of Idi Amin Dada, the brutal dictator whose iron fist terrorized Uganda in the 1970s. From his early life and unexpected rise to power, to unspeakable crimes and ultimate downfall, we piece together first-hand accounts, hidden truths, and chilling legacies. If you're drawn to stories of political intrigue, dark history, or human resilience in the face of terror, this is for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss a deep dive like this. In 1971, a towering man in military fatigues seized power in Uganda, a man who would soon become one of history's most feared dictators. Idi Amin was once celebrated as a national hero, but behind his boisterous laugh and populist charm hid a brutal hunger for power. Over the course of just 8 years, his regime was responsible for the deaths of up to 500,000 people. He ruled through fear, silencing opponents with bullets, expelling entire ethnic groups, and turning Uganda into a graveyard of shattered families and unfulfilled dreams. But who was Idi Amin before the tyranny? How did a man with no formal education rise through the military ranks to take full control of a nation? And what caused him to spiral into madness, paranoia, and bloodshed? This is not just a tale of power gone wrong. It's a haunting reminder of how quickly hope can turn to horror when fear becomes law. In this video, we uncover the full story of Idi Amin, his rise, his reign of terror, and his ultimate fall. From decorated soldier to ruthless tyrant, this is the terrifying legacy of the man who called himself the last King of Scotland. Idi Amin's beginnings were as obscure as they were unlikely. Born around 1925 in Koboko, a remote town in northwestern Uganda, his early life was marked by poverty, violence, and mystery. He came from the Kakwa ethnic group and was raised by his mother, a traditional herbalist and diviner. His father abandoned the family, and Amin grew up with little formal education, often described as illiterate even into adulthood. But he had strength, charisma, and an uncanny ability to command attention, traits that would carry him far. In 1946, Amin joined the King's African Rifles, a colonial regiment of the British Army, where he served in Burma, Kenya, and Somalia. Though known for his brutal efficiency, he quickly gained a reputation for cruelty. Stories emerged of him torturing suspects during the Mau Mau rebellion in Kenya, yet he rose swiftly through the ranks, becoming one of the first Ugandans to achieve the rank of major. His rise mirrored the country's transition to independence, and he became a symbol of native empowerment in a post-colonial era. But his ambition didn't end with medals. When Prime Minister Milton Obote promoted Amin to army chief, few suspected it would be a fatal mistake, one that would ignite a nightmare Uganda couldn't wake from. The coup that brought Idi Amin to power in 1971 was swift, bloodless. At first, he seized control while President Milton Obote was attending a Commonwealth summit abroad, announcing on the radio that he had saved the country from corruption. Many Ugandans celebrated the military takeover, unaware that they were applauding the rise of a despot. Within days, Amin declared himself president, commander-in-chief, and life would never be the same again. What followed was a rapid descent into authoritarianism. Amin purged the army of suspected Obote loyalists, often along ethnic lines, executing hundreds in secret and public killings. He surrounded himself with a fiercely loyal security apparatus. The State Research Bureau and the Public Safety Unit, both notorious for abducting, torturing, and murdering thousands. Newspapers were silenced, judges disappeared, and political opponents vanished overnight. Amin's rule became absolute, enforced by terror, Yet he portrayed himself as a man of the people. His public speeches were laced with jokes, populist slogans, and appeals to Ugandan pride. He granted himself outrageous titles like Conqueror of the British Empire, but behind the buffoonish persona was a master manipulator. As the bodies piled up, fear replaced hope, and Uganda became a police state under one man's fist. By the mid-1970s, Uganda had become a slaughterhouse. The initial purges expanded into a national nightmare as Idi Amin's paranoia deepened. Political rivals, religious leaders, intellectuals, and even army officers were routinely tortured and killed. Mass graves dotted the countryside. It's estimated that up to 500,000 people lost their lives during Amin's 8-year reign, though the true number may never be known. Most were abducted in broad daylight, never to be seen again. Their only crime being suspected of disloyalty. One of Amin's most notorious acts was the 1972 expulsion of Uganda's entire Asian community. Nearly 80,000 people, many of whom had lived there for generations. He gave them 90 days to leave the country, claiming it was an act of economic liberation. In reality, it was a xenophobic purge. Businesses were seized and handed over to his cronies, leading to the collapse of the economy. Shops closed, food shortages spread, and basic services crumbled. Uganda, once a rising star in Africa, was now broken and bleeding. Tales from survivors speak of secret torture chambers, death squads, and families torn apart in the dead of night. There was no rule of law, only Amin's whims, and anyone could be next. In Uganda, under Idi Amin, silence was survival, and fear was the only constant. Even as blood soaked Uganda's soil, Idi Amin strutted across the global stage with a twisted confidence. He loved spectacle and attention, often hosting foreign journalists with charm and theatrics. For a time, some nations, including the UK and Israel, cautiously maintained ties, hoping to influence him or protect their interests. But Amin's erratic behavior quickly made him a pariah. One of the most infamous international incidents occurred in 1976, when Palestinian hijackers landed a plane full of Israeli hostages at Entebbe airport. Amin welcomed them and positioned himself as a mediator, even as he supported their demands. What followed shocked the world. Israeli commandos launched a daring rescue mission, killing the hijackers and dozens of Ugandan soldiers. The operation humiliated Amin, who responded by executing hundreds of perceived traitors in revenge, including Dora Bloch, an elderly hostage taken to a hospital. Amin's erratic diplomacy became a circus of alliances with rogue states and dictatorships, from Gaddafi's Libya to the Soviet bloc. He awarded himself ridiculous titles like King of Scotland and claimed to be a spiritual advisor to the Queen of England. But behind the bravado was growing instability. His image as Africa's clownish tyrant masked a man spiraling deeper into madness. By the late 1970s, cracks in Idi Amin's regime were impossible to ignore. The economy was in freefall, infrastructure had decayed, and public services were virtually non-existent. Hospitals lacked medicine, schools were shuttered, and food shortages sparked unrest even among his loyalists. With no enemies left to eliminate, Amin turned on his own allies, deepening the fear and distrust within his inner circle. His once firm grip on power began to loosen. In 1978, Amin made a fatal miscalculation. After accusing neighboring Tanzania of harboring rebels, he invaded and attempted to annex the Kagera region. But Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere responded with overwhelming force, launching a full-scale counterattack. Allied with Ugandan exiles, Tanzanian troops swept through the country. Amin's army, demoralized and weakened by years of purges, collapsed quickly, towns fell with little resistance, and by April 1979, the capital Kampala was seized. Idi Amin fled to Libya, then Saudi Arabia, taking his stolen millions with him. He would never face trial, never answer for his crimes, never return to Uganda. His downfall was as sudden as his rise, and for many Ugandans it came too late. But the nightmare was finally over. The tyrant was gone, leaving only grief and ruins in his wake. After Idi Amin's flight in 1979, Uganda lay in ruins. The new government faced an impossible task: rebuilding a country hollowed out by fear, violence, and economic collapse. Institutions were shattered, trust was non-existent, and families searched desperately for loved ones who had vanished years earlier. What followed was a turbulent era of coups, civil wars, and shifting power. A nation trying to exorcise the ghost of its darkest chapter. Amin himself lived comfortably in exile, first in Libya, then settling in Saudi Arabia under the protection of the royal family. Despite numerous calls for extradition and trial, he was never brought to justice. In interviews, he showed no remorse, claiming he had done nothing wrong, even describing his rule as peaceful. He died in 2003 from kidney failure, never facing the pain he inflicted on millions. But the scars remained. Generations grew up without parents, without answers. Uganda's economy would take decades to recover. Politically, the country remained fragile, and the trauma Amin inflicted became part of its national identity. Streets where blood once ran now carry quiet stories, whispered memories of friends, neighbors, and dreams stolen by a man who believed he was untouchable. Uganda survived, but the shadow of Idi Amin never fully disappeared. Idi Amin's rule wasn't just a tragic chapter in Uganda's history. It was a global warning, a reminder of how easily charisma can disguise cruelty, how swiftly power can curdle into tyranny when unchecked. He rose through the ranks, not because of vision or intellect, but because of brute force and blind ambition. And once in power, he did what all tyrants do: silence dissent, weaponize fear, and surround himself with lies. Yet what makes Amin's legacy so chilling isn't just the scale of his crimes, but the world's hesitance to act. For years, global powers watched. Some even smiled and shook his hand as Uganda bled. By the time they turned away, the damage had been done. His story is a brutal case study in what happens when humanity is stripped away and leadership becomes a theater of violence. But Uganda's resilience speaks louder than Amin's horrors. The people who survived, rebuilt, and remembered ensured that his legacy wouldn't be one of silence. As we examine figures like Idi Amin, we're not just digging into the past, we're defending the future. Let stories like this never be forgotten. If this story moved you, subscribe for more deep dives into the untold and unforgettable, and like the video to help others discover the truth.